And now for your listening pleasure, here's Pulizzi and Rose, covering the week of media, marketing, and digital content news. This Old Marketing. Take it away, boys.
Well, hello there, my friends. This is Robert Rose, and welcome to episode number 393 of This Old Marketing for Friday, September 15th, 2023. And with me, as always, as he always is, my pal, my colleague, and a guy who's definitely having a better week than Ashton Kutcher and Mila Kunis, Mr. Joe Pulizzi.
I'm having a great week.
Yeah, fantastic. They are not. Those two are not having a good week.
Yeah, we should talk about that a little bit. But this is one of the greatest opening football weeks.
It's a good week
of my life. Actually.
It's a good week for both of us. There is no doubt about that. We both had dominating wins.
Haven't seen a Cleveland Browns opening home opener victory since 2004, I believe.
Oh, well, there you go. I mean, and I'll bet it's even longer than that, where there was both a opening week victory for the Cowboys and the Browns.
Well, yeah, you'd be. I'm sure the Cowboys have won more.
They haven't actually. I mean, they usually, it's almost foregone conclusion that they lose the opening game. They've gone 0-1. I think the last 5 or 6 years.
I'm not ready to say Super Bowl. Cowboys, Browns.
There you go.
But I'm already, it's already one more victory than I thought they were going to have this
year.
You
go. I told you, man. I told you.
The defense is, what surprised me about the Cleveland Browns defense is they're fast. They're really, really quick. And they, for some reason, they did really well at open field tackles. And they don't usually do that. They usually like to miss the first couple.
Yeah.
Because, let somebody else get it. But they did really well with that. Nick Chubb, tremendous game. So here's the weird thing about Cleveland weather. I know you get weird weather sometimes in LA, but we got to the game, got there early enough for all the festivities, and it's raining. Mm-hmm. They're little teeny raindrops. It's like 15% of a raindrop the entire time.
Not sure how that works, but all right.
I live 6 miles. I live 6 miles from the stadium. It didn't rain once at my house.
Yeah.
It rained there was a cloud over the stadium the entire time, which the next day it was gorgeous weather, 75 and sunny. And I'm like,
sure.
I've almost said, I wish it was this weather yesterday, but then I don't think we would have been as dominant because for some reason, Joe Burrow can't throw a football in wet weather. Joe Burrow is Cincinnati,
of course,
Bengals quarterback. I don't know what the deal was. I talked to my son afterwards. He was watching the game on television and said it was a big, like they were talking about Joe Burrow's hands and him changing gloves like 3 times. You watched it, right? Were they bringing that up? Like, what's the deal?
I did not watch. So I watched it through the Red Zone channel, which is, I know now we're getting really inside sort of football here, but I watched it through the Red Zone channel. So I don't hear a lot of the commentary. I just see the plays.
Yep.
And so I watched a lot of it through that. So I didn't know. What I noticed was pretty much all the games on the East Coast, it was raining. And all the quarterbacks were having struggles throwing the ball.
Well, that's good for us because we just need to run the ball, play
exactly,
defense, and it worked out well.
Exactly.
Anyways, it
good
was
weekend.
A great day in Cleveland,
good weekend.
And then I watched the night game, Dallas and the New York Giants, and that was a spanking.
That's the technical term for it. That is exactly it.
It was like you were watching an NFL team and then something else.
Yes, I tweeted out that basically the Giants should rename themselves X because then nobody will remember it and everybody will remember it as Twitter.
That's great.
Yeah,
you come up there all by yourself.
I did come up with that. Yeah.
Your opening comment. The whole Mila Kunis Stoner Cats thing.
Yeah.
I know it's not a news story, but I did see that. And so basically the SEC is charging Mila Kunis's Stoner Cats NFT project with what's going on there?
I believe it's like actual like charges, like not Not like, oh, slap on the wrist kind of thing. It's like, no, serious. It's a serious thing.
Why doesn't the SEC like stoner cats? Like, what's up?
Well, yeah, I think they don't like what's behind stoner cats is more like it. And
I think so. Here, I don't know what the charges necessarily are, and I just saw the headline, so of course I know nothing with this whole thing. But the ongoing problem here with the SEC and crypto in general is there's no legislation. No one knows what the rules are right now, and Congress can't get their act together for any legislation, and SEC is just going out there and they're just enforcing without anybody knowing anything.
That's right.
So they're going out and they're saying all these companies are doing, well, that's unregistered. That's unregistered. You can't do that. That's a security, whatever. What? We don't know. Nobody is telling us what they are. They've been approved for sale. It's almost like the Coinbase thing where SEC approves it. Oh yeah, you can be a publicly traded stock. And then they come out with all these regulations afterwards that you can't sell these things. Well, you said it was okay here, but not, I don't know.
Well, they didn't. Well, they never said it was okay. What they said was we don't have a opinion on it, right? One way or the other. Now they do in a big way. I mean, they got fined $1 million, and basically the charges, the scenario is Stoner Cats was going to be an animated series, and it was kind of a way to crowdfund, if you will, the series itself. And so they raised apparently by selling the NFTs of the Stoner Cats, they raised $8 million. And then the SEC went, yeah, that's not, you didn't register, you were really selling securities in a going venture, and that's not the same, right? And I think they probably picked on this because if you think about it, what they really did was they launched a business, right? They launched a business and then launched up, the ability to fund this new business by selling by quote unquote selling shares, right? Which obviously were positioned more as NFTs of the characters. But $1 million later, and by the way, shutting it all down, right? They're going to shut it all down as well.
So but you could say the same thing if they were membership, they were tokens, so you get membership, so you could watch the show.
Yeah,
it's just a different way to do subscriptions. The only difference here is that it's on the blockchain, and SEC doesn't like the blockchain.
I'm sure. Well, I'm sure there was probably not a very clear delineation of that, right? I'm going to guess that, because I didn't see the website or I didn't see the sales offer or anything like that, so it's hard to comment on it. But I would guess that it wasn't positioned that way. It wasn't positioned as, hey, you're becoming a super fan of the show by supporting the show, a la a GoFundMe kind of thing. It was probably more positioned as own a piece of this show, right? And that's a very different.
I don't know if that was the case. I mean, I remember when they launched the whole thing. Of course, again,
so I'm reading an article.
Right. We're two people. We don't know anything.
Well, I'm reading an article. I'm reading an article. See, it's right here on my screen. Okay. Right.
Yeah, you're
there,
pointing.
Right?
People can't see you pointing.
Okay. All right.
Well, some people can if they're watching this on YouTube or LinkedIn. But
as part of its marketing strategy, Stoner Cats' team reportedly boasted about the highlights of owning one of its NFTs, including the option to resell it for a higher profit in the future. It also emphasized its expertise as Hollywood producers, its knowledge of crypto projects, and the well-known actors involved in the web series, leading investors to expect profits because of a successful web series that could cause the resale value of the NFTs to become more valuable in the secondary market, right? So it's a little, they maybe a boo-boo on the positioning there. Yeah. Yeah, basically,
there's some no words.
It's the for-profit part of that is when it's a security.
There's nothing wrong with you can take this and you can take this token and resell it. But once you start saying investor, and once you start saying
or profit, membership versus secondary market, right? I mean, in other words, are you creating a market or are you creating a membership? And it's the words are important.
Yeah. When did words become important?
I don't know. Well, anyway, but you couple that with their public statement about Masterson, right? I don't know if you saw that news item as well, which also happened last week for them, which was, their...
Oh, Danny Masterson? Yeah.
Yeah, and they came to, which is an awful story.
They were on the same show. That's not really part You're just basically breaking apart the members of that 70s show.
Yes, but I'm saying they had a bad week. They had a bad week because they got called to the carpet for that for basically coming to his defense and all of that, which is just bad marketing. It's just bad.
Isn't it for, I thought for the trial, didn't they send in like videos?
Yeah, they sent in basically
he was a really nice
character
guy.
witness. They were character witnesses basically, where they said they sort of stood up for his character and said he was a good guy, and then. It wasn't that necessarily. It was when they got the backlash from that, they kind of came back and went, yeah, well, we're sorry. We know how that kind of came across, and blah, blah, blah. In other words, again, when we've talked about this on the show, that they didn't sort of stand up for what they said. They sort of tried to weasel their way out of it. And that's when you have a really bad week, is when you start trying to weasel your way out of what it is you said, because you clearly either you're not standing up for it, or B, you're realizing that it's you acknowledge that what you said was dumb or stupid or inconsiderate, and you're trying to excuse it. It's like, go one way or the other. You got to go all in if you're going to make those kind of statements.
Well, they should learn from us, because we own our stupidity. We absolutely do.
We never weasel our way out of comments.
Yeah, like every once in a while, folks, like we'll get hit with you said this or whatever. It's like, yeah, we did. We are stupid. Like why? And then we kind of throw it back on our listener. It's like, why are you listening to us? Don't you have anything better to do?
This is your fault.
This is your fault, because you can't find anything better to do with your day than to listen to the two idiots talk about something around marketing.
That is right. That is right. That is right.
Last thing, I know we have other stuff to get to. I had 2 emails this week from people that said you're our favorite marketing / football podcast.
There it is. There it is.
That's what happens in the fall.
It's only for 6 months. Yeah, it's only really for 6 months. It's really just September through January. Really.
If I could get you into Premier League football, we could do it all year long.
Yeah, that's not going to happen.
NFL, and then we could do Premier League. We could do
probably not going to happen.
Football. We could do American football. It'd be fun.
That's probably not going to happen. I got to be honest.
Well, you won't.
I follow it.
I follow to a certain point that in your life, and you're like, you don't want to change anymore.
No, it's not that. It's like I follow it. I follow it loosely. I follow it kind of like I follow baseball. Like when it gets to the playoffs, I watch baseball. It's kind of like I watch basketball too. I watch basketball from the playoffs onward. I don't really watch it during the regular season.
All right. Well, the Premier League has started.
Yes,
and our team Arsenal's doing okay. Like we feel good about the year. Had some injuries, not very happy about that, but I am more of a Browns fan. I have to tell you that. So,
yes.
Do we have
a show
to talk about today?
We do have a wonderful show here. We're going to start with a very quick one, which is we're going to talk about Quibi. It's been a while since we've talked about Quibi, so get your shot glasses out and your alcohol, because there was a while where Quibi was a drinking game with us. But yeah, Quibi may be finally dead, and we'll talk a little bit about that. We'll talk a little bit about the DOJ and the Google antitrust trial, because that has just opened. It was NFL opening weekend, and it was the DOJ's opening weekend. And so there's some fascinating things going on there. And once again, showing how little the government actually knows about how the internet works. And then we'll talk about Kindle and Amazon and how they're ending Kindle periodicals. And there's interesting things to talk about there as content creators, as marketers, with books, periodicals, magazines, and media. And then if we get time, we'll talk about the fact that the Arena Group, and they own Sports Illustrated, for example, has launched a creator network, which seems to be all the rage these days, launching creator networks.
We need a creator network.
But we do. We'll get we should just launch a creator network. Makes for a good press release anyway.
If we could just say we launched one, but we don't.
We should
do anything.
We should. And we should launch, what we should do is then launch them all as NFTs, right? Launch each individual
creator
network
NFTs. And say you will absolutely lose money.
Absolutely. In the metaverse with blockchain, and all powered by generative AI. Okay. We'll then get to a question from one of our audience members. Thank you, Robert Riggs, for your wonderful question. We'll get that out. That came in through the website, and then we'll get to Rants and Raves, and we'll talk a little bit about. I'm gonna I'm going to rave a little, just a tiny little skosh about Apple's announcement and what they talked about and how they sort of backed that up.
That's right. The new iPhone is
the
out.
new iPhones are out. Yeah,
the
new
iPhone
iPhones
62.
are out. That's exactly made with titanium. I think it is.
Are you going to talk about this later?
And Stardust.
Or is there anything new?
There's not. There's nothing new. There's nothing new really. But the interesting thing was the positioning of the announcement being so much focused on being carbon neutral, and that's what I'm going to rave a little bit about is the content that they created to support that announcement. And then I'm going to actually have some commentary on CAA, the big agency here in Hollywood, was acquired last week, and I have a thought on that and as it relates to content marketing. And then you are going to rave about maybe the greatest sports throw in Cleveland history of all time.
You got to wait for it.
Yeah,
gotta wait for
it. That's just a tease. Amazing. That's what they call a tease, folks, in the biz. Mm-hmm. All right. So great. A lot to get to. So let's get to our first story.
Load this baby up here.
Boom. So this here we go. Quibi dies a final death. So if it was only mostly dead, said Miracle Max, well now it's finally dead as Roku kills off many of its shows that it actually purchased. This article coming to us courtesy of the very famous site lowpass.cc, whatever the hell that is. And
is that different from Easy Pass?
Or High Pass or
whatever.
Yeah, or something.
Bounce Pass.
Bounce Pass. Okay. Or Long Bomb Pass. Some Quibi content is out on the way out at Roku, says the article. Here's a service I didn't think I would have to write about anymore in 2023. But you did anyway, didn't you, author? You really just did. Quibi has been dead for 3 years now, or mostly dead. That's my addition. But much of its content has lived on as Roku originals on the streamer's ad-supported Roku channel. Until now, that is. This week, Roku announced that it would lay off another 10% of its staff and remove select existed licensing and produced content from its Roku channel streaming services to cut costs, resulting in an impairment charge of up to $65 million. Roku didn't detail which titles it's removing, but I discovered that many of the titles the company had gotten its hands on as part of the Quibi content acquisition are already gone. Some of the titles missing are Reno 911, Reno 911 Defunded, Dummy, Memory Hole, and a bunch of others with Will Arnett and some other things. But basically,
with a lot of. I can't believe the Joe Jonas travel coffee series got nixed.
Yeah, of course. That's I
would watch Joe Jonas. I mean, he can drink
have coffee.
Anywhere.
Yeah,
he's got such a wonderful voice. He's so talented.
He's. Rare. Okay.
No, I'm serious. I love the Jonas Brothers, man.
So, I mean, do you think this was? I mean, look. I mean, this is we don't have to spend a lot of time on this, but do you think? So, what we've seen over the last few months, anyway, are streaming services, and this is at the heart, by the way, of the writer's strike, the actor's strike, et cetera, which is residuals that are due based on streaming media. Is this just a way that Roku says, hey, let's kill some of this stuff off? Because the question is always why are they removing shows from something that is streamed when it's basically just downloaded? It's not like you have to pay for it again, but maybe you do. Maybe there were residuals due to the artist as part of the deal.
I think you're right.
Of the Quibi content, and that may be why.
And to continue,
that's the only reason I can think of.
Well, some of them they were up to, you had to keep creating them for their episodic series, and they're like, done with that. They said, Joe Jonas, you can stay home now. We don't.
But was he continuing to make that show? I mean, was it current? I don't think it was current, was it? I mean, it was just
older.
Yeah, it was. Because if there's one thing better than Joe Jonas Coffee Live, it's the reruns.
Jonas.
It's old Jonas. It's the classic. It's the classic Joe Jonas.
Oh, Jonas, get your coffee.
Yeah, seasons 1 and 2 were really the high point of that series. Yeah.
Sorry. Okay. So. Yeah. A couple of things bigger than the whole Quibi conversation is there was a couple years ago that all these streaming networks, including your traditional networks and your HBOs and Disney's, were spending so much money on original content. You'd never get the investment back.
Right.
You can never sign enough subscribers to get this back. So we, as an industry, we were spending whatever it was, 10 times the amount that we'd ever get back. And of course, we use this all the time. 2023, they're now right sizing into their proper businesses. So they're like, okay, we can't just spend like crazy, like it's 1999. We actually have to do some diligent work and say, okay, what makes sense from the content I create and how much can I expect from a return? So there's that. And the other thing that I was thinking about is, for some reason, when you look, and this is any company, when you look at the content that you're creating, you don't want the largest percentage going to content creation. You actually want it to be like 25 or 30% of your costs going to content creation, and the other 70 to 75% goes to things like marketing, promotion, and audience acquisition. So I think that's where they're getting smart, where you've got Disney that's saying, I'm not going to fund these 1,000 shows. We're actually going to spend more money on audience acquisition so people can actually watch these shows, and it makes more sense. So those are the two things that I thought about specifically with this whole Quibi thing. That really doesn't mean anything outside of the fact that I can't believe that it actually was a thing and started in the first place.
Yeah, well, and it also brings to light, it's another data point on the trend of the just to exactly to your point, the trend in our data point in the trend of the where streaming media is right now on a content acquisition position, right? I mean, this is why, hindsight being 20, I'm sure that both SAG and WGA would have been much better for them to strike 2 years ago when things were red hot and and basically acquisition was at its hottest, because it would have been a much more incentive and leverage point for them to get a deal done. One, coming out of COVID, and then the heat around content acquisition and how much streaming networks were paying for that stuff. And then two, because now they just don't have any leverage. They just don't, they don't, the business is down, and this is in many ways, the streaming networks are going, okay, cool. Yeah, we can take a break. We're all good. So this is, it's a challenge right now for them. And this is why I don't think the strike's that's not getting solved anytime soon.
Yeah. Just another data point. It kind of goes with the exuberance that we had in 2021. I just sat down at breakfast with a friend of mine. He runs a VC, and he was saying that 2021 was really tough to get, and for your money to get any kind of a percentage of ownership in the company. He said today the expectations of founders have come way down, and you can get a lot more for your money in 2023. So it's really good on the buy side. Of that standpoint. So I think it goes along with, 2021 probably would have solved that strike pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Right now, it's actually most of the power is with the studios, if you will, because they could just sit. I think they could sit for a long time on this. I know they won't, but they won't.
Could. I think they'll solve it early next year. I think we're in for
January. You think January?
I hear what I hear rumblings about is the mid-January, right?
It's definitely not going to be October,
date.
Right? Because I heard the next meeting was October. It's not going to happen. So maybe January.
Yeah, and it's not going to happen over the holidays, I can't imagine. So it'll, because they've already got their plans, right? They've got their plans together for the fall. Everything's set, right? As limited and or expansive as it may be, depending on the network, they've got their fall set already. They had their fall set in the summer. And so now maybe there's a few episodes that they'll be short, or there's a movie, for example, I hear, what movie was it? It's literally, they were saying it's 95% done, right? But they can't actually go finish it. So it'll delay.
It's probably Mission Impossible too.
Well, there's a lot of those, right? But
the second part to the new
right.
one.
But the key is that
the seventh or whatever.
That's right. That's not delaying something that would happen in the fall. That's delaying something that would happen in January, February, or spring to now late summer. So where you're going to feel this is not now. You're going to feel it this fall. You're going to feel it really pronounced from a consumer side in the spring of next year. That's when there's going to be like this just lack of content out there.
It's amazing. You don't think about all the people affected by this. I know through another friend, there's a lawyer who represents a pretty high profile actor, but there hasn't been anything to do for the past couple months. So they're looking for new work. Like, you don't think about all the people, like there's nothing happening right now. So people are just looking for whatever they can get. So hopefully for all those people involved,
Well, there's people that are. I mean,
resolution.
there's all sorts of announcements here locally, you know, of actors and writers doing like weird little projects, right? You know, like making an internet cooking thing, or or selling recipe books, or making quilts, right, or podcasting, that sort of thing. It's like, it's there's a lot going on. I mean, and it gets a little, obviously a little weird in terms of what they can and can't do, but yeah.
It's crazy.
All right,
all your
moving
friends in LA.
Yeah, all my good friends in LA that are in the business. Yeah, there you go. All right, let's get to our biggest story of the week here, which is as the DOJ's Google antitrust trial begins. Here's what you need to know. And this article is coming to us courtesy of Digiday. Good article on what's going on and what happened this week as the sort of theatrics of the trial began. The article opens up by saying 3 years after the U.S. Department of Justice filed its landmark antitrust lawsuit against Google, the case finally went to trial yesterday with opening arguments setting the stage for a landmark legal battle. The stakes are very high for Google, and experts say the case could shape the future of online advertising depending on the outcome. There's a primer that's linked on the case on what's actually up for grabs here, but quite honestly, it's just, does Google control the digital ad market? Basically, that's the question. This week's trial is happening parallel to a separate antitrust case the DOJ filed earlier this year that focuses on the open web. The first one, focused on search market, was filed in 2020 by the Trump administration. In some ways, these opening arguments could serve as a crash course for anybody trying to learn about the complexities of online advertising. They're not that complex, folks. It's just not that. It's not that complex. And for advertisers who want to see the industry through a legal lens, that is a little more complex in terms of what's going on here. Antitrust stuff always a little more complex than other things. So, what do you think? I mean, any thoughts on the opening of the trial and what's going on here? I have a quick take, but I'd love to get yours.
I find it hard that anything seriously will happen with the amount of money that Google is spending on the Hill.
Right.
And they have for a long time. They've got lots of lobbyists, lots of friends.
They are not making the same mistake that Microsoft made in the mid-90s.
That's exactly right. I just don't think so. They know how to play the game, and they've done really well for a long time. I think the big issue is, I want to get your take on this, seems to be that there's because they bought access and they paid whatever $4 to $7 billion and now $10 billion for exclusive access to be the search provider on Apple devices. That seems to be the thing, because if you look at the competition for search market, anybody can create a search engine. So
that's right.
That's not an issue. They're not inhibiting that competition. It's the fact that, Apple is the gateway for all these people finding things, and Google bought access to that like a sponsorship. Is that enough to say it's against antitrust law? I don't know.
I don't think so, because it's kind of the reverse, right, of what was alleged in the Microsoft case, right? When you looked at the Microsoft case back in the mid-90s, and I know that seems like ancient times now, but at one point, the operating system, Windows 95, and the browser, basically the whole thing was around the browser, right? So whether or not they could exclude or exclusively default to not using competitive browsers or competitive apps in the Microsoft OS, and that was sort of the heart of it. This is kind of the opposite, where Google has said they're not excluding anything, but what they're doing is they're buying their way into becoming exclusive access through the iPhone and obviously through Android, because they own that, but other platforms. And they're sort of using their, and if you buy the DOJ's case, it's sort of like, well, they're using their brute force muscle, basically money, to basically monopolize an entire industry, the search advertising. And man, I think there's a lot of counter arguments here. There's a lot of counter arguments, and I think they'll make those counter arguments, in terms of evolution of AI, certainly the growth of verticalized search, the growth of search becoming much I'm sure they'll point to Amazon and say, look, here's product searches are happening through Amazon now, location searches are happening through Maps, Apple Maps, and Apple other technologies. You've got vertical search happening through travel sites. You've got all those kinds of things. They're saying basically, it's too late, right? I mean, it's too late to punish us for the stuff of 5 and 10 years ago. You can see where the market is going, and we're actually losing. We're actually starting to lose share of that space. And so you can't, it's don't fix the sins of the past that you didn't fix before. And I'm sure Google CEO, who's a very charming guy, will do that in a very, very charming and
he's very good in front of a
camera. So I hold little hope that, well, I don't know that I'm hoping one way or the other, but I think the general feel is that if there was going to be a judgment here that Google would be broken up. I don't think it will be.
No, it's great that, I mean, if you look at search as anything on internet search, it's hard to just say, oh no, it's just the browser experience or just google.com. I mean, you're right.
Yeah.
Amazon look, they share of product search.
Of course. Yeah.
YouTube. I guess that's they're probably. I guess they're lumping YouTube in with this as well.
I think they do. Yeah.
Search engine.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I think they do. I mean, and I think look, there's certainly no doubt that Google has the vast majority. I mean, a high. I don't even know what it is off the top of my head, but I've got to imagine it's in the 90% range of all searches conducted on the internet. It's still very high, and it is high because many people default to it on their, and Apple and Android are the two biggest mobile platforms out there. So you're going to get that, right? I mean, Microsoft is just a very, 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 very weak second in this, and things like DuckDuckGo and others, are just so far down, it's not even funny. But
slap on the wrist. I think it'll be a slap on the wrist. It'll be multiple billions of dollars in penalties. Google will say,
exactly.
Yes, please take 0.1% of our cash on hand. You may have it. They will pay the toll, and things will go on as normal.
That's right. Exactly. That's right. And they may have to. Interestingly enough, it may be that there may be something that prevents them from having exclusive access. I could see them doing something like invalidating the deals with Apple and others to become the default search engine, right? I think I could see them doing something like that as sort of a,
But there has to be one.
Well, what I would see them doing is saying basically you can't make it your default, right? They would say, you have to give users, in other words, make users choose, right? In other words, when you come in and you set up your phone for the first time, make users choose, which is, again, everybody's going to choose Google. Let's be honest, but they'll take away sort of the default, if that's the right way to put it.
I want more Bing.
You want more Bing in your life. That's
I want more Chandler in my life.
And more Chandler in your life. All right, there we go. That's good.
It's a little Friends reference.
That's good. Yeah, that's okay, Boomer. All right, there we go.
Did you read his autobiography, by the way?
I've read parts of his autobiography, yes, and
I listened to it.
It's so funny because so I don't know. You're either going to see this or not, and the audience will either see this or not. But back in the day. We're talking not anymore, certainly, but back in the early 2000s, I would often get mistaken for him. People would say that I looked like him or that I sounded like him, and I actually had somebody come up to me in a movie theater once and ask me for my autograph, thinking I was Matthew Perry.
No way.
Yeah, it's true. I've never seen the resemblance, but people told me that, and so it's like, I don't know. Do I look like Chandler Bing? So okay, do I sound like Chandler Bing?
We might need some graphical help on this.
I don't know.
The show.
I don't know. But anyway, but the point being is that I did listen read part of his autobiography, and yeah, I mean, it's not that good. Let's just be honest. It's just the guy had some troubles.
Back in the day when I had a full head of hair, I was mistaken for Aladdin in the animated show.
Okay. All right. There you go.
I was very happy. I think it's because the eyebrows.
There it is.
And that's before I had a beard. So it was when I was a mere child.
Okay.
Because I grew a beard. I was like 14.
Well, that's just weird. All right.
This show is weird, man.
Yeah.
What are we talking about here?
I don't know.
Okay,
I don't know. We're moving on to our next story here, which is this is actually really interesting. And thanks to our good friend and family of the show, Buddy Scalera, for sending this
buddy.
over. Yeah, the headline here, there's a couple of things we'll link to in the show notes for this because it's actually a fascinating story. Amazon has ended periodicals program, which you may or may not have even realized existed. But independent publishers are feeling the brunt of this because basically Kindle periodicals was sort of their online version of where you went to subscribe to magazines and independent magazines at that. So anything that was a magazine or a regular and consistent publication on the Kindle, this is what they had. And basically, as The Verge says it and opens up and says, I like short stories, I read them and I write them. Grew up subscribing to things like the Magazine of Fantasy and Science Fiction, Analog, and Asimov's. I used to read Asimov's all the time. It was a great magazine. I also understood that any resource that makes it easier for these publications to find and keep readers, like the ability to gather subscribers through Amazon's Kindle periodicals program, can make all the difference in keeping independent books and their walk on that balancing tightrope balanced until that resource goes away. And basically, Amazon has announced that the periodicals, the newsstand, will no longer support paid subscriptions. So you can't go there with your, publish on that platform and get a share of publications. Now, my quick take on this, but I would love to get yours because you're now in this business. You're truly in this business. My take on this is that Amazon had to do this at some point because I'm sure the overhead of managing all of those payments and managing all of those things was just so hard. And, you're talking about micro payments in some cases, so sending checks for, funny enough, royalty checks that I get now from some of the stuff that I did music-wise back in the day, I get checks for 58 cents and stuff like that. It's just a cost. It's a huge cost for them. And so by doing this and moving, by the way, they're moving all of this to their on-demand program where you can basically, move your stuff if you apply and if you get into it. Sort of like, now moving into, basically the online store where you can still have your publication featured, but you're going to have to manage subscriptions on your own. You're going to have to manage all that payment, so you'll get royalties if your stuff gets downloaded, but you're not going to get the subscription fees as part of what it is you're doing. So I think they had to do this. I mean, this is a business decision clearly to aggregate and cut costs and do things, but it's not any less painful. I mean, it's yet another rented land story, but it's what do you think about this?
Well, a number of periodicals are now going out of business because a large portion of their revenue is coming in through this. I totally understand. I mean, you and I talk about this all the time, whether it's Twitter X or Instagram, and they have algorithm changes, or YouTube. We totally get it. These big private companies, they make decisions on what's important, what's not, what's making money, and what's not. And they do this. So Amazon sat down. I agree with it. They said, this is not good business for us. We're going to get out of this business and we're going to leave these 300,000 plus businesses that have these periodicals. Sorry, we can't help you. Here's another option, but we're out of this business now. And it's just weird. The same thing over and over again. We give all this data and all this information over to these big companies and we let them keep it and we never get it back. That's what the crazy thing is. So if you and I had a magazine and we put it up on the Amazon periodicals, we don't know the person subscribing it. We don't get that data. And it's the same thing. I talked to an author yesterday about versus taking their book and selling it direct on their own website versus putting it on Amazon. And they're very scared about not putting it on Amazon. And I'm saying you could put it on Amazon for discovery, but don't send your customers to Amazon, make less money and not get that data and know exactly who signed up and what you delivered. So, and you get more money to do that. Yeah, but it's just an adjust. We feel like we have to give in to these big tech companies. What I would like to see, what I feel happening, Robert, and I don't know if you see it on the content marketing side, I feel there's a shift to, we now have the technology, we now have the data in our email newsletters and our databases that we've been keeping and our marketing automation that we can sell these things directly. And we don't have to go through a Google and Apple and an Amazon to get. Now we're almost at that point. Still like, oh, I can sell. Like for a musician, it would be great that if somebody really liked my music, could I just send them to my website and yes, we can do that now. It's a little bit fumbly. We're almost to that point where it's seamless. We're getting there with books. And now what do these periodicals have to do right now? If they want to stay in business, they have to sell direct. So there's this huge movement on selling direct to your fans. And I like that movement, but there's still a lot of trepidation for people to do that because they're like, oh, that's not the way it's done. Like I would like to see, I think now that I'm getting more into the book side, I think you're going to see more like book events that say, how to be profitable as an author without Amazon.
Right.
And that's what seems to be coming. So this is just another thing of rented land and another tragedy.
This is a classic business challenge that has existed since ever, which is the lack of a marketplace, right? So when you have a viable marketplace to show your wares, you benefit from all of the other products in the marketplace. In other words, by building a marketplace, and you can call that a mall, you can call that a farmer's market, you can call it an Amazon, you can call it, a Spotify, you can call it, whatever it is. You're basically benefiting from being a centralized place where people go to shop. And so in the old days, for this, we'd call it a newsstand. And one of the things that you would do, that consumers do, is they go to the newsstand and they browse and they look for it. So the question becomes, are you subscribing to the newsstand or are you subscribing to the individual publications? In other words, where do your loyalties lie as a consumer? And what we have seen, the behavior is that a lot of people, their loyalty belongs to the marketplace, not the actual marketer in the marketplace. And a lot of that has been grown out of the digital sort of evolution for the last 23 years, where companies like Microsoft and companies like Amazon and companies like Google and companies like Spotify and others create an online marketplace and make it really easy for entrepreneurs to show their wares in the marketplace. But then you can't be surprised when they shut it down, when if people don't come and people don't actually buy things, well, they kill it. They move it, or they when the costs move. When malls died, right? And so malls may be coming back now. There's all kinds of things, and so ultimately, you're absolutely right. The entrepreneur, the marketer, the one putting their good into the marketplace, has to get a centralized place where they are creating customers. That is the heart of any business, creating a customer. And where you create that customer should be your owned sphere of influence. It needs to be your owned land. Yep. Then where you reach and frequency that thing, great. Do that on rented land, do that on, buy space and media, create, free stuff that gets distributed all over. Basically, find your place in the market, but own your storefront. You've got to own the place where you create customers. And it's just as simple as that. And so what we're seeing is an evolution of the periodicals market to get into that idea. I think there's huge opportunities here for companies like Lulu, by the way, to get into this space, because periodicals are very niche, very independent periodicals for sure, is a great niche business for somebody to create a online marketplace that allows you, what was that company that Spotify acquired, where it was basically a podcasting platform where you could own your email database and you own your, I forget what, Anchor? Was that Anchor?
Oh, Anchor. Anchor was the distribution.
Yeah.
Creation and distribution arm.
Right. But you could own your spot, right? It was kind of like a WordPress for podcasting. It was sort of, you owned your own subscribers. I
haven't used Anchor, so I don't know.
Yeah. I can't remember. There was a podcast platform that I think it was Anchor that they did that. But it's kind of like that, right? It's how do you build a platform where people, a Substack, if you will, for the ability to do periodicals. And it'll be interesting to see who fills that spot, if anybody.
It's so when I launched the novel and I was selling it through Amazon for basically peanuts, this is in 2019 and 2020, I thought that I had to go through Amazon to do that because, to your point, I thought they were loyal to the player or to Kindle, whatever the case is. And what I learned over a couple of years was you'd have people in, like, my subscribers of my e-newsletter would come back to me and say, Joe, where can I buy this that helps you the most? Like, they would actually ask me that.
Yes.
And I think that's what you're surprised. So when you build like a content marketing initiative and some loyalty initiative where people want to buy from you and they want to give your money and whatever, they don't want to go through Amazon. They don't want to go through these third parties. So that's where I think there's an opportunity now where, people are loyal to big companies like Amazon because they're used to it, but they might be more loyal to you as the creator and do some things a little bit differently. And that's how it starts. So the more of us that can do these kinds of and get people used to going direct to the creator, and you can put packages together. You don't just have to sell a book. You could sell a service. Like for you on the consulting side, you could sell a book plus an hour of consulting, and you could do all sorts of fun things that you can't do on Amazon.
Funny you should mention that.
Oh, yes. Are you going to do that with your book launch?
There may be something coming. There may be something coming. There may be something coming.
I like it.
Yeah,
I like it.
I'm super excited about it. I'm be launching a Content Marketing World, but and more about that later. But yes, it might be just exactly what you described.
Oh, I like it. I can't wait. I'm gonna buy an hour of consulting.
There you go. Yeah.
I'm going to buy an hour of consulting, and I'm going to have it during this time that we record, and I'm just going to let you do the show.
There you go. There you go. That's fantastic.
Yes,
all right. Should we pay some bills, basically.
Pay some bills.
What we should
do.
We have a wonderful sponsor to talk about.
So yes, you all need to go to StreamYard.com/thetilt. And if you do that, you get a lifetime discount off of your StreamYard. And if those of you that have been following us, listening to us on whatever your audio device is, or watching us on our brand new fancy YouTube channel at This Old Marketing, we are now using StreamYard. We've been using it for what has it been, Robert? Like I don't know, a couple
of months,
like 3 or 4 months now, I think. And what's great about it is that we're spending less time editing, we're spending more time creating, and we can distribute. We can do our live stream directly to LinkedIn whenever we want to. It's really easy to take the file and upload it to YouTube. We can distribute it however we want to through our distribution platform. It's just made it so much easier. I can't recommend it enough. Obviously, we're users of it. And if you would like to do this with your podcast and have video and audio, if it's audio, great. If it's video, plus it's even better for your distribution options. Go to StreamYard.com/thetilt. Check it out. Tell them that Robert and Joe sent you. And I don't know.
It's good stuff.
I don't know. I like it.
It's good stuff. I will tell you this, and I mean this. I'm not just because they're a sponsor, but I mean this. And I use a lot because I'm a guest on a lot of podcasts, and guests on a lot of like webinars and stuff. And it's for the live aspect of things, for the sort of if you're doing stuff live and if you're doing stuff sort of in real time. Best one I've seen. Best I've seen. In terms of ease of use and features, it's just really great, and it's dependable. That's the one thing, right? Is that you don't want something crapping out on you in the middle of a recording or a live stream, and this has been very dependable.
Well, and the good thing, it gives you multiple files too. So I can have just a file of Robert speaking.
That's
I can have a file of me speaking. We can do combinations. So depending on how you do your post editing, it makes it real easy. You just pick and choose what you want.
Exactly.
And
exactly.
Good
just
to go. It's
100%.
It's almost like they're a sponsor of the show. We're talking about them like they are sponsoring This Old Marketing.
Almost. All right. Well, let's get to our question, our audience question here. We've got a wonderful audience question coming to us from Robert Riggs. He emailed this in through the website, if I'm not mistaken.
thisoldmarketing.com. There is a place to send your question, or you can, you know what, Robert, next time you have such a sultry voice. You should call it in. You should call it in and we'll play it.
Oh, there you go. I could do the voiceover. Yes.
Anyways, Robert Riggs. Robert's been a big fan of the show. I've met him a couple times in person at Creator Economy Expo. If you get a chance, go to truecrimereporter.com and check him out, what he's doing. Got an excellent documentary on YouTube that you absolutely have
fantastic.
to check out.
It's so
good. If you're into the true crime stuff, I watch some of it. I can't take that stuff because I get scared at everything. But
it's great though. It's great,
anyways,
and like you said, his voice is amazing.
Okay, so Robert says, asking for our philosophy on this about sharing personal stuff, and Robert says, as an old school or just the facts man reporter, I've been reluctant to do this for fear of looking like I'm bragging or showboating. So, but when his wife went to LA for Oscar night, he shared some photos of personal, and he did really well on social. He did the same thing when they were in Dubai and India. Oh, you're traveling all over the place, Robert.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Fantastic. And he got some really good engagement. And he's been reticent to do that. And basically what Robert is saying, please weigh in with your guidance on why content entrepreneurs should do this, meaning share more personal facts and stories about them, and the guardrails for not looking so egotistical.
Yeah.
Do you want to go first? Do you want to get my take on it?
I can go first. I'm happy to go first. My advice is going to be, you have to figure out where you're going to draw a line. Because look, the first thing is that your audience will love that. There's no doubt that your audience is going to love that. Because again, this goes right to what we were just talking about 10 minutes ago, which is they're subscribing to you. They're subscribing to you as the creator, and the work is second, right? So they have there's trust in you, the storyteller, because you're giving them trusted stories. And so getting more of you into the promotion and the ultimate service of your subscribers is only going to do nice things until it doesn't. And so what I mean by that is you've got to figure out where you're going to draw the line from how much personal information you want to make accessible. Because one of the things that I see a lot of content creators regret later on is how much of themselves, how much of their private lives they've made accessible to subscribers and basically the world, right? So it's not necessarily your audience per se as much as it is you're making it accessible to the world. And there's a lot of good that comes with that, and then there's some not so good that comes with that, because you're going to open yourself up to critique. You're going to open yourself up to sort of unkind comments. You're going to open yourself up to all sorts of things, and so you got to make a decision about what part of your life you're going to open up. I've been, just as an example, not that I'm nearly like in any sort of famous camp or anything, but I've been pretty circumspect about what parts of my life are open and what parts are not, and how I talk about it. You see that Joe and I do this all the time. We share very much personal parts of our lives with the audience, and I do that. But for example, my Facebook and what I talk about there and where I go on vacation and all that kind of stuff kind of isn't for public consumption. And so I don't really talk about it. I just don't talk about it, because not only is it irrelevant really to what I do for a living, but it's also not something I necessarily need to take. My politics is a good example of that, right? Where, it's probably pretty obvious, but I just don't talk about it because it's not relevant to my audience sharing my personal story. So I say, once you so think about it, be considerate about it, and then stick to it. And then, yes, use it, because it's a wonderful way to get a more intimate relationship with your audience.
Yep. No, that's a great answer. For me, the channels that I use have very specific purposes.
Exactly.
And that's what I would recommend. I think that's exactly what you're saying. So I share very personal things about what I'm doing, mostly about where I'm traveling and like my nonprofit efforts and those types of things on Facebook.
Yep.
And I talk about those a lot, and I don't share hardly anything regarding business. I know some people that do both. I don't.
Right.
I don't share a
Same
lot
here.
of business stuff on
Same
Facebook. LinkedIn, I'm all business. I post almost every day some thought for content entrepreneurs, content creators. I don't share a lot of personal on that. The joepulizzi.com newsletter, which is sort of my random newsletter that goes out to about 10,000 people, that is where, kind of to your point, I shared things like Robert brings this up because I shared my whole trip to Nantucket and what I liked and what I didn't like and whatever. But I do that informed because I know my audience likes information about travel.
Yeah.
Now I give it my personal spin, but I'm trying to help them give it. So I talk about financial stuff. I talk about travel stuff. I talk about marketing stuff, but I do it from, hey, here's my thinking, Joe Pulizzi. And I do it very personal. But as you see for the tilt.com's newsletter, you don't see anything personal about Joe Pulizzi in that one, even though I'm involved a little bit into that newsletter. So I think, Robert, first of all, have your audience in mind. What are their needs? What are their pain points? If you can insert a little bit of your authenticity, that's a really good thing. And that's where creators have an advantage over marketers and media companies, because most of when you get an email newsletter from a creator, it's from them. That's a big difference than getting it from Joe Pulizzi versus the Tilt. Like maybe if you're a Joe Pulizzi fan, you're more likely to open the Joe Pulizzi, but sometimes Joe Pulizzi fans don't want to get certain information from Joe Pulizzi, like what I care about politically, like same as you. That's not going to help anybody.
Right. Exactly. And I think the other thing that I would note is the line that I kind of draw, where this show is a great example. We share a lot of personal stuff on this show, including our love of football, our love of cocktails, our love of, events, our love of traveling. We share a lot of personal information here, but they are all centered on the celebration, right, of us, right? And your audience in many ways wants to hear and see that, right? They want to hear and see this celebration. What they don't want necessarily are, some of you, I 100%, I'm so appreciative of this, that there's been audience members out there who have reached out to me and said, hey, you sound like you're, like a little sad, or you sound like you're, and they're picking up on stuff. There's absolutely right to pick up on those things, but it's not, there's no focus on that, right? There's no focus that we have on those kinds of things, right? It is about, talking about you in the celebration that's helpful for the audience, entertaining for the audience, and ultimately valuable for the audience. And I think that's where you sort of can start to think about where you draw your own personal lines in your sandbox.
Yeah, I know some creators that basically their entire channel is them. You made a point
right.
About,
gosh, yes.
It's
not a bad decision. It's
not a bad decision.
It's just a decision I wouldn't make.
Very successful, but they basically have recorded their entire lives, and in some cases, their kids have grown up out there. I mean, my kids don't have asked me not to share anything on social, and that's been the case for the last 6 to 7 years. I feel really bad before that because I didn't really ask them for permission, and now, they don't want that footprint, which is odd, right? They're on social media, but they don't want the social media footprint. I know there's a lot of kids that are in that state. But anyways, it's great question.
Great
Robert.
question.
We appreciate it. Next time,
absolutely.
Thisoldmarketing.com. We want to hear you talk.
That voice. I mean, that
So
that voice of his is amazing.
I gotta put his documentary on, and then I can fall asleep to it. It's so soothing.
In a good
except
way.
for the subject matter.
Yeah, in a good way. In a good way. All right. It is now time for our rants and raves section very quickly here, where we go off on a little bit of a rant or a little bit of a rave that makes us feel like, well, both of our teams dominated in winning in a week, or it makes us feel like, well, Aaron Rodgers feels right about now. Well, what are you going to do? I mean,
don't you feel bad for him?
No, I actually don't. I mean,
By the way, Aaron Rodgers tore his ACL. Aaron Rodgers is the quarterback for the Jets. It was very, very hyped, and now not so hyped. He's out for the year, I believe.
Have you seen? You've seen some of the memes coming out of this, right?
I've not seen a meme at all.
There's some good stuff about vaccinations and whether a vaccination would have helped him and stuff like that. So
unbelievable.
Anyway,
it's like in the fourth play of the season or something.
Third play. Third play.
Jeez.
Third play. Yeah,
Terrible.
there you go.
Terrible. Okay.
All right. You want to go first? You go first. Yours is quick, I think.
Okay. It's quick, and I don't know. I'm gonna play this. So you're not gonna see but if you can see this basically a Cleveland Browns fan. I gotta stop this here. There's a group of Cleveland Browns. They're celebrating. They're tailgating before the Browns game. Yeah. And they're on the Cuyahoga River. Cuyahoga River runs right through Cleveland. There's huge tankers that come through that area. Yeah. And so they're having a party, and they're having a conversation with a gentleman on the tanker, American Courage, about having a beer. And there's a little bit of thing goes, and the guy from the tanker said, there's no way you can make that throw. It's about 50 to 55 yards away, and the guy said, hey, throw me a beer, and the challenge accepted. And you can see we're showing this on the screen. He basically pitches that thing all the way from across the river, and he dimes it directly, gets the guy right on the boat. It's amazing, and they're basically, everyone's calling it the best pass in Cleveland Browns history. But what I love about this, so it went super viral, millions of people watching it, because the guy is, I mean, no, not many people can throw a beer can 50 to 55 yards on the dot on a guy on a moving tanker. But that said, he threw a beer, and the beer is garage beer, I believe, from Columbus Brewing. Really good beer, by the way, really good light beer. And Garage Beer immediately came out with a T-shirt, and the T-shirt says "Best Pass in Cleveland History." It shows the boat, so I like the story's fun. If you get a chance to see it, we'll put the video in the show.
The fact that the boat is called American Courage, the name of the boat is American Courage, is, I mean, it's written for the. I mean, it's written to be a movie.
It's perfect. Yeah. It's absolutely perfect. But I like the fact, if you want to call it newsjacking or whatever, that the beer company got involved, tweeted it out, really got into the whole storyline behind it, and came out with a shirt. And the shirt apparently is selling pretty well. So I just thought that was a really cool story, because Browns fans don't have a lot to cheer about usually on opening weekend, and we did this time.
Right.
So, anyways, it was fun.
Very good. All right.
And you, sir?
I have a very quick rave, which is to say, so the Apple big announcement this week was, of course, the new iPhones, but, and everybody's going, iPhone 15, iPhone 14, what's the difference? Potato. However, kind of, I don't know. The real announcement was their Apple's stance on carbon neutrality, and it's a big deal these days with companies and how they're helping the environment and their stance on the environment and all those kinds of things. And there's been lots of controversy around marketing and content and how how those stories are being told, and should they be told, and is it greenwashing, and all those kinds of things. And what I love so much about what Apple did was they put together a piece of content, and you'll find it all over social media. It's going a little bit viral today, and I'm sure will over the next few days. It's just a masterclass in how to create a piece of content and a piece of content marketing that's entertaining, as well as valuable, as well as informative, as well as promotional. It strikes such a wonderful balance. It's a very quick, it's 3 minutes, I think. Tim Cook is in it. There's a bunch of Apple executives sitting around a table, and basically Mother Nature makes her appearance. And I'm not going to spoil it any more than that, because it's just worth a watch. And it's just so good in terms of how they deliver the information, that they're proud of everything they've been doing from a carbon neutrality perspective, getting all the statistics out, but doing so in such a entertaining and fun way. It's just, say what you will about Apple, but this piece of content that was put together is just really a masterclass in how to tell that story. So I love it from that perspective, and just wanted to rave about it.
I've not watched it. I'll have to do that.
It's good. It's really good. It's really good. And again, you can believe them, you can not believe them, all the things about the actual issue aside, although I think they're actually, putting their money where their mouth is. But the piece of content is just very well done. It's just very, very well done, because they clearly don't take themselves too seriously. They're making fun of themselves as they make, as they make you laugh. They are the butt of the joke. It's just really good. So just in terms of storytelling, it's just really well done.
Excellent.
Okay. My commentary, I guess, is just a data point for all of you out there, against something that you probably didn't pay much attention to, but I think might be the biggest indicator yet that content marketing is actually becoming marketing. And that's kind of the theme of my keynote at Content Marketing World. And it was the acquisition of CAA. So CAA is the huge talent agency in Hollywood. They represent everybody. I mean, if you name the big star, they represent them. Brad Pitt, Margot Robbie, Samuel Jackson. I mean, everybody, and as well as sports stars. By the way, they represent Aaron Rodgers, Dwayne Wade, Cristiano Ronaldo. They are truly the 900-pound gorilla when it comes to talent agencies. The way that they made their mark in Hollywood wasn't how big the stars were. The way that they made their mark was in a concept called packaging. And what they did in the 90s and early 2000s was become really good at packaging. What they would do is they would pull talent together, and they would actually pitch not just the talent, they would pitch shows. They would pitch series. They would pitch tours of combinations of, musical acts. They would put together shows and businesses. They even now have a thing called CAA Ventures that is all about launching new businesses. By the way, Quibi was one of those businesses that they had a huge hand in putting together. So it's not that they're perfect, certainly, but there's a whole venture firm that is within CAA. By the way, they also have a branded content studio where they're doing content marketing, bringing in their celebrity stars to create content marketing projects for brands. So they have their own custom studio. So agencies pay attention. Now they've been acquired by Artemis. Now you don't know Artemis. It's a big investment firm owned by Jean-Henri Francis Pinault, who is a French investor. But you do know their brands, right? You know Gucci, Saint Laurent, Christie's Auction House, Balenciaga, all of these big luxury brands. And so the interesting thing here is that why would they acquire CAA? Well, think about it for a second. The combination of access to premium A-level talent in a very challenged market at the moment in terms of how you make money as a premium actor, writer, producer, director, and the ability to bring that to luxury brands. By the way, Saint Laurent has its own movie studio, produced its own movie that debuted at Cannes Film Festival last year. Gucci has been huge in doing things with like Harry Styles and creating content and marketing itself as a media brand. And the ability to put together new businesses, new media businesses. Well, now you have a pretty magical combination of creating premium level content, engaging on building audiences, driving the sales of brands, luxury brands and products and services. So to me, I look at this and I go, this is perfect. This is exactly what brands should be doing, is looking at how do I build the operations of a media company inside my business so that I can package together talent, shows, businesses, and launch these media businesses as a part of a business strategy that is ultimately a marketing strategy, and making a differentiated piece to do that, to get around the idea of rented land and the idea of paid media. And I think it's an important set of data points to start to put together. So the question becomes, who's going to do this in manufacturing? Who's going to do this in services? Who's going to do this in healthcare? Who's going to do this? You've got companies like Cleveland Clinic, Arrow Electronics, others that are doing it, but who's going to really make the big splash here? And I think it's 24 is really going to start to see some of these things come together.
I think it's a great point. I think especially with a lot of the valuations coming down to earth.
Yes, exactly right.
The difference. I think a lot of people had these ideas a couple of years ago, but the valuations were through the roof.
That's it.
And now you're looking at you can actually get some of this business done now. So it's a really, really good point.
That is it.
Excellent.
All
what
right.
do you have going on this week, sir?
Well, I have basically prep. It's all about prep now for...
We have Content Marketing World.
Content Marketing World is coming up. We're coming up. Yeah, it's Content Marketing World all the time. I'm getting my keynote ready. I'm getting my classes finalized. I'm getting my little launch that I talked about earlier ready. So it's, I'm busy.
Yeah,
as they say, Frosty the
What's
Snowman.
the book? What's the book title? What's
Content Marketing Strategy is the book title.
That's exciting.
Yeah, it's going to be
very excited.
It's going to be. Sure you are. I'm sure you are.
I am.
A lovely blurb, by the way, written by you, is featured on the cover of the book. And yeah, I mean, I'll talk a little more about the book as we get closer to launch date. But yeah, it's all coming together. It's all coming together.
And I'll be out. Of course, I'll be out there.
Yeah, of course.
Have my little speech.
My little speech.
It is, but I mean, it's a new speech for me.
It'll be fun.
If you're a marketing person, how to effectively quit your job,
I love it.
Which I'm sure the folks at CMI were happy to have that talk.
Sure. Yeah.
We'll see how it goes, but I'm excited about it because so many entrepreneurs leave and they don't, or they want to be entrepreneurs leave, but they don't do the things up front that you need to do before you leave.
Exactly.
Very, very important. So there you go.
Awesome. All right. Well, and of course, we'll see all of you in future shows, and basically get on over to thisoldmarketing.com, won't you? Tell your friends, give us a review, send us audio questions. We love the audio questions, especially if you have dulcet voice like Robert does. And so do that, won't you? Get over there. And until we see you next week, everybody, well, just remember, in the meantime, it is your story to tell. Tell it well. We'll see you next week on This Old Marketing.